Well, hello friends. Welcome back to Commute Talk. It is sunny and gray at the same time today, so I have no idea what kind of day this is going to be, but we'll find out. Today we're going to take yet another viewer question. This time it's from Max, who's asking about the best and the worst code bases that I've worked on. And what made them good, what made them bad, what did I like, what did I dislike. And yeah, that's a very interesting subject, and it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick just one. Certainly in the worst category. So I guess the worst code bases that I worked on were definitely the ones that were early in my career when I was doing web development, because this was like 15 years ago now, and I was working at we call it a web bureau in a small town in Sweden, and we would just take any job that came across the desk, basically. And very often those jobs were things like, hey, my cousin's friend's son made this website for my company last year, and I can't get a hold of him, but I really want this picture here to be gone because this guy doesn't work for me anymore. I'll pay you to remove him. It took a lot of those jobs, and very often we were not the first people to take such jobs in those code bases, if you want to call them code bases. It feels a bit charitable to call them code bases, because really they were more like Microsoft front page projects dumped onto some FTP server somewhere. But yeah, like let's roll with the theme and call them code bases, because they were often very crap, as you can imagine, and they got more and more crap every time someone worked on them. I made them more crap by working on them too, because every person like tasked with changing something about these websites would come in and tweak the little thing that they were asked to tweak, and then charge the customer and then piss off, right? So when you have people do that over and over to something, it's not going to look very good, and none of these things did. And like everyone who worked on these things, these websites, they all had their own ideas about how things should work. There was no version control. There was no history information. There was no way to get hold of anyone who worked on it before. And with static content, it didn't matter so much, because like you could just go in and tweak the little tweak that was wanted, and then you were done. But sometimes these things were made with PHP or ASP.NET, things like that, and then it was a little bit, I mean, I didn't know any better at the time, but it definitely was a very clunky way of development that you could never get hold of who was there before. I remember sometimes I found these like little comments with names in them, and I would try to visualize these people in my head, like visualize the guy who was here before me. It was like graffiti in a way, I guess. It was a very different time back then. And yeah, those were definitely the worst code bases that I worked on. But then I guess it's more fun to talk about the good code bases. So the first time I worked on a really good code base, I would have to say that it was the Commute project, because I worked on the KDE code base before that, but I wouldn't call that a good code base. It's more like a huge code base made by really driven, pragmatic people. Of course, I haven't worked on it for like 13 years now, so it's probably totally different today. But back then, it was very much like pragmatism over everything else, and like, you want to get shit done, then this is the place for you. And but like when I got into Commute, then that's when I was first introduced to revolutionizing concepts like continuous integration and unit testing. And I've talked about that before in videos, but I didn't know about these things when I joined the Commute project. And my very first task as a Commute engineer was to fix a failing unit test in the WebKit port. And that was just, I felt so small suddenly, realizing that there were all these things that I never knew about, and all these cool techniques that you could use to avoid bugs and make better software. And I was a little starstruck by the whole thing. It was cool. And Qt was definitely a good code base, made by many really good engineers. They had good quality culture for the time. When I started there, we didn't have like formal code review requirements, but instead what we had was like some of my coworkers would sometimes ask me, hey, can you like look over this code that I wrote, like give me a patch review here. And I didn't really understand, like, why do you want me to read your code, bro? Just commit it. What's the problem? If it works, right? I didn't get it at first, but later on, as I did more and more code reviews, I started to see the utility, and I even asked people to look at my stuff sometimes. It was pretty cool. But it wasn't until I joined the WebKit project, which, I mean, to be fair, was like basically at the same time that I joined the Qt project. It's just that I came to WebKit as a Qt engineer, so at the time I was trying to like internalize the Qt development method, because those were the people like in my immediate surroundings. But in the WebKit project, they have a strict code review requirement, and that to me in the beginning seemed really overkill. But as I got more and more code reviews done, especially by people that I couldn't talk to in person, but like I could just interact with them through code review, basically, there was something like really humbling and very, I don't know what to call it. Like I really felt like I grew from that process, from interacting with others through code review and experts through code review. And WebKit, I would say, has an excellent quality culture as a project, especially one of that scale. So they have tens of thousands of integration tests and like full stack tests, and they also have thousands of unit tests. And they run all of it for every couple of commits, I think. I mean, at least last time I was there, they didn't have the firepower to quite test every single commit, but because the test suites and stuff, they take a long time, so they would like end up doing batches. But the batches were usually quite small. Like your commit ranges would be like between, I don't know, sometimes one commit, but sometimes 10, depending on how much was happening in the tree at the time. But the thing that I thought made WebKit such a great code base is that because of all of this unit testing and integration testing and everything, then that enables them to have a culture of continuous refactoring and a culture of continuous optimization, which is really not possible to do unless you have tests at the wazoo. And what I mean that they do is that, like, normally, like a project of that size, you might think, well, the basic data structures are done, right? Like, they work, there's no need to mess with them. But it's not like that. Like, they frequently have people coming in and working on the core smart pointers and the core vectors and hash tables and stuff, because there are improvements that can be made. And they're always updating it with support for the latest versions of C++ that are available to them. Of course, they're a bit constrained because they have to build on many different platforms with many different compilers. So that's something that I didn't like in those code bases, both Qt and WebKit, that they had to support many operating systems and compilers that were not even available to me. So like I couldn't even test them if I wanted to. especially in Qt. But it was kind of a soft requirement to support some things, and I think there were like ports to AIX and stuff like that, and Solaris. But it wasn't like a problem that was getting in my way. But it's definitely something that I didn't like about those code bases, is that they were they were dragged down, I felt, by having to support old compilers. And that's something that I think is really awesome in Serenity, that we build one tool chain, and then that's the tool chain that everyone uses, and it's the same compiler, and it's a recent compiler, although I would like to upgrade it to an even newer one soon. Looking out for the next release of GCC or Clang, because there's a feature that I would really like, which is no discard on constructors, and none of the released versions have that, so I'm holding out for someone to release that compiler with that feature. It's just a small thing, but like it matters to me. And let's see, something else I didn't like. I guess something I didn't like in WebKit was that the rivalry between Apple and Google that eventually tore the project in half, and like had them go and build Blink instead of like everyone agreeing to disagree about some things and working together despite disagreements. I think that was very sad, and that's something I ended up not liking. I didn't like that WebKit was forked. I liked it at the time, but now I consider it one of the saddest things that ever happened in technology. Because, you know, say what you will about Google and Apple and companies like that, but the fact that they were cooperating for as long as they did is nothing short of amazing. And I really think we could have kept that going for a while longer. Anyways, I guess those were some unstructured thoughts about that. So, what's your worst code base? You have some horror stories you want to share? What's your best code base? What makes a good code base anyway? I guess I will say something that in my opinion makes a really bad code base is when it's not obvious how to build the thing. And it's something that sucked dreadfully in Serenity when it first got attention on Hacker News, because like it was on the Hacker News front page one day because someone posted it there, and I had like thousands of people coming to the repository, and there was no way to build it. I just had like this little note that said, well, you're going to need a cross compiler for Serenity, and here's a wiki page about how to build cross compilers. That was really not that helpful. Like I think probably no one ended up actually running the thing. I recall I made a QEMU image for someone on Reddit who asked about it somewhere, but like basically no one had a chance to test it, and that was really sad. And I was sad about that at the time because I wished I would have put some time in to make it buildable. And I mean, nowadays it's just a matter of running a few shell scripts, so it's in a much better place now. But that's something that really sucked, and I was sad about that in retrospect. And I guess I will say about WebKit that I always felt that it really sucked that if you wanted to add a file to WebKit, then you basically needed to install Xcode, because the project was using Xcode build system files to build, because that's what all the Apple engineers were using. And when you come to WebKit as a non-Apple user, much less like an Apple engineer. But even like, say that you don't have Mac OS, right, and you don't have Xcode, and then you want to add a file to WebKit somewhere, and then you have to add it to the Xcode project file, and then it's not very text editor friendly because you have to add the same thing in a bunch of places, and then there's some weird like hexadecimal looking hash that I don't know what it's a hash of, and then you have to have that in a few places in the project file. So what ended up happening often was that, and I've done this too, is that I would just I would want to add some file while working on Qt to WebKit, and then I would ask someone at Apple or someone that I knew who had a Mac, like, hey, can you open this Xcode project, add this file, and then send me the diff of the Xcode project, and that's how I went about adding files before I had a Mac of my own. That was just really, really silly. And I don't know if they're still using Xcode. I haven't looked at that because there was a big effort to port WebKit to CMake for a while. That I think it was Alex Christensen who was working on that. Maybe someone else too. But I don't know if that ever got switched over to. Anyways, that's something I really disliked about WebKit. Like, bad build systems really make things worse when you're like working in a code base every day. And I guess I should highlight that specifically because my own bad build system in Serenity is just like getting a little bit more tiresome every single day. And it's going to get to a point where it's too much and I have to write it in CMake instead, which is, I'm pretty sure is what's going to end up happening. I just keep postponing it because I want to hack on other stuff. But yeah, I guess that's that. So yeah, I'm out of steam here. So thanks for hanging out with me on the commute. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye.